Hi, welcome back. In previous video we have created our first Spring Boot application and we ran our Spring Boot application as a standalone by using our Spring Boot main class. In this video we are going to create a simple REST endpoint and we'll access that REST endpoint from the browser. Okay, and go to our main base package and then new and then choose class. Let's give class name as hello world controller. So look at the naming convention here. Whenever you want to create a Spring MVC controller, then always provide a suffix as a controller for your resource. So hello world is nothing but a resource. We are creating a simple REST API. So in a REST world, we call this class as a resource or this entity as a resource, and then we suffix this resource with a string controller. So this is the typical naming convention we use in our Spring based projects to create Spring MVC controller. So just remember the naming convention. You can also use the naming convention like hello world resource, but typically developers follow this naming convention in Spring based projects like hello world controller. Okay, so different developers follow different naming convention. Perfect. Let's keep hello world controller and hit finish. Now this is a very simple Java class. Okay, now we want to make this class as a Spring MVC class so that Spring MVC class will handle the web requests, right? So in order to make this class as a Spring MVC class, we need to use add controller annotation. And the REST APIs that we write inside this class, for example, let's say if we write a get REST API or post or put or delete. So all these REST APIs should return a JSON or XML format. Okay, all these REST APIs inside this controller should return a JSON or XML or other different representational format to the client. So in order to return this kind of response, we need to use add response body annotation. So basically add response body annotation convert Java object to JSON or XML and it will send back to the client. Alright, so we typically use these two annotations. So Spring provided a shorthand annotation which is a combination of these two annotation, that is called @REST controller annotation. So instead of using these two annotations, we can use @REST controller annotation. Okay, perfect. So just remember @REST controller is the combination of @controller and @response body annotation. If you go inside this source code of @REST controller, you can see here this annotation class is annotated with @controller and @response body annotation. Okay, great. Now our controller class is a REST controller class, and this class now able to handle the web request. Okay, let me remove these comments here. Now what we'll do, we'll create a method here. Let's say public, and this method returns a type string, and let's call method name as hello world, and this method returns a string called hello world. Okay, so this is the simple method. So this is how we define a method in Java, right? Now we have created a simple method, and this method we want to make as a REST endpoint. In order to make this method as a REST API, we need to annotate this method with @getMapping annotation. Okay, so we have created a method, and in order to serve this method as a REST API, we have to annotate this method with @getMapping annotation. So there are many other annotations like @putMapping annotation, @postMapping annotation, @deleteMapping annotation that we will see in upcoming videos. But just remember, this this method or this REST API will handle HTTP GET request. Let me write the comment over here, get HTTP method, and we can define a URI for this REST API. For example, let's say hello world. So this is the URI for this REST API. When client access this REST API with URL http localhost :8080/hello world, then this REST API will get called, and this REST API will return hello world string to the client. Okay, when client access this REST API with this URL, then this REST API return hello world string to the client. Okay, great. Now what we're going to do is we're going to run our Spring Boot application and we'll test this simple REST API. Okay, our Spring Boot application is up and running. Let's head over to browser, and now let's refresh, and we need to provide our REST API endpoint URL, right? /hello world, and hit enter, and there we go. We got hello world as a response from the REST API. So look at here, we have provided a URI for this REST API, that is hello world, and a client is using this URL to access this REST API. Okay, alright, let me summarize the steps. You need to create a hello world controller class and annotate this class with @REST controller annotation so that this controller can able to handle a web request or REST API request, and create a method and annotate this method with @getMapping annotation so that this method serve as a REST API, and this method or this REST API can able to handle HTTP GET request, and client can use this URI to call this REST API, that is localhost 8080/hello world. Alright, so this is a very simple REST API we have developed in this video, which returns a simple string. In next video we create a REST API which returns a bin or a JSON, standard JSON to the client. Alright, I will see you in next video.